Welcome back to another TERF Talk Down Under. I'm Stasia. With me is Angela.
Hello, hello.
Well, it's been a busy week in the transgender wars. There's been a lot going on. One of the big stories here in Australia has been this push led by the Greens to introduce they want to throw $15 million and make that available for gender affirming surgeries. So taxpayers will be footing the bill. And they were even talking about things like facial feminization surgery. Crazy. Did you see much of this?
No, I saw a little bit of it and I was just so outraged I didn't keep reading. What percentage of the population is apparently trans at the moment? It seems to be an ever-growing population because there seems to be Tim's trans-identifying males everywhere at the moment. Since lockdown has finished, everywhere I go, I'm seeing trans-identifying people. I think at last count, it was 1% of the population. Mm-hmm. And not everyone who decides to be trans stays with that journey. So why would we put that much money into affirming something that may not necessarily last a lifetime when there are plenty of people, particularly women, out there who have medical conditions that are not a choice or a belief system that are not funded by Medicare?
Yeah, it's just mental. One of the things that I thought was people are going to regret getting the surgery done, and then what? They're going to sue the public health system for having performed this surgery on them.
If they're able to, because the public system doesn't seem to be able to be sued at the moment. Like there's detransitioners out there that are trying to get some justice and they're just dismissed. So, the way that the world is going, people can do all sorts of heinous things to each other and there's no consequences, particularly, for medical professionals that say, oh, but it was their choice. That's what they wanted. They wanted that nose job. They wanted that boob job. They wanted to have their penis taken off and their bowel turned inside out and turned into a fake vagina.
The other issue with it is, I know from watching videos by TT Exelansic, that there are so many complications, a really high rate of complications, and with the requirement for multiple extra surgeries to fix what's gone wrong. So I'm not sure 15 million is going to cover it.
They're not even asking for genital surgery. They're not asking, none of them seem to want to transition fully anymore. They want to keep their penis and they want to use it, but they want the breasts because they're turned on by themselves having breasts, and they want the facial feminization so they're not paranoid about not passing.
Yeah.
Now, unless you can afford Blair White level of feminization surgery, you're not going to look anything like a woman, even if you do have it. I mean, especially if it's like public funded facial feminization, I don't think it's going to make much difference,
Yeah. I just thought of Hannah Mounsey getting facial feminization surgery. Would it work? Would he pass?
Would it work on one of the Hemsworths? They look the same. So, but it's just really sad. Like, I know a lot of women who've had, injuries from childbirth. Either they've had that muscle separation in their tummy and they're left with like a big bag of loose skin and they need a muscle repair. That's not covered by Medicare. Having your pelvis, what did we talk about before? It was having your your bits lifted back up again. Yeah, your pelvic floor lifted up again and tied back up so that you don't suffer incontinence or any other, quite severe issues. Now that's currently not funded by Medicare. And if you have to have it for medical reasons, and basically you have to be completely bladder and bowel incontinent to get it, then, the waiting list is 7 years.
Crazy.
So yeah, they're not funded. And, these are debilitating conditions for women, particularly as they get older. Like they've had children when they're young. And then as they get older after menopause, when your skin sort of goes all lax, they're left debilitated by these things and they're easily repaired surgically, but it's just not available to them. And people are suffering, you know, and the consequences of that on, say, productivity in the workplace and things like that will be huge, and nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Yep. The other standout ones are if a woman has a breast or both breasts removed because of breast cancer, it's not publicly funded to get breast implants, have breast reconstruction surgery after that. And the other glaringly obvious one is, well, what about dental? You know, people with rotting teeth, that can be debilitating.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Or if you lose a tooth in an accident or something like that, you know, you say you're in a car accident and you get your teeth smashed out by your steering wheel, that's not covered by Medicare. Even if the accident isn't your fault, the TOC doesn't cover it. You know, it's just mad. It's mad that they're requesting this for like something that, you know, you wouldn't go and get liposuction on a person with anorexia. That makes about the same amount of sense as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's just terribly misguided. Fingers crossed the Liberals that control the lower house will just laugh it off and go, no, we're not going down that track, and that'll be the end of it. Well, at least for now.
Well, are these political parties, like, who's funding this sort of stuff? Like, surely it can't, you know, these are not grassroots things, you know, like when a lot of the women's rights things, these are not, you know, someone is behind this. Somebody is funding this, or someone's encouraging this pro-trans propaganda, and it's just over the top at the moment. Like every single thing that the Green, every couple of days the Greens do something trans this and trans that, you know, the TV trans this and trans that, all of the newspapers, like it's just this massive pro-trans propaganda, and somebody is funding it. And we know that there's the links to ACON and the, you know, Pride and Diversity scheme, and they get little ticks and money's exchanging hands, but there's something so much bigger than that. It's really quite frightening. And the fact that political parties are actually lobbying on this and taking it to elections, and you know, some of it they're getting passed for this tiny percentage of the population, when there are so many people struggling with things like homelessness. You know, there's not enough jobs. You know, there's a lot of people living in poverty after the lockdown in the pandemic. There's people going without food. And here they are wanting to pay for facial feminization surgery for blokes who, you know, have like a kink, and they want to satisfy their kink by pretending to be women. I mean, that's just sick.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, if it does make any progress through Parliament House, at least we can expose some of these things, hopefully. Draw attention to autogynephilia. Does the general public really want to be funding an extreme male fetish? Like,
well, I know transsexual people that have had a full transition, not the genital transition. Like, I know some transsexual people, and they paid for that themselves. Like, they saved up the money and they had the surgery, and they had good quality surgery, and, you know, the results were good, and that was their choice. But that was back in the day where you had to, you know, live as the opposite sex for a few years. You know, it's much harder to transition then. It wasn't a decision that someone just suddenly made and then all this stuff was available to them like it is now, not the affirmation pathway where, oh, I'm trans, and then, oh, great, here's your drugs, here's your surgery, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, particularly someone who I was very close to, their transition happened over 15 years. And the first sort of 8 or 9 was trying to convince a therapist that this permanent invasive procedure was the right thing for this person. Now, you know, 20 years post-transition, I'm not sure that it was, because that person's incredibly unhappy. Like, it wasn't the cure-all for that it was, you know, suggested that it was. But, you know, it was the right thing for them at that time for sure. And, you know, and there's a very big difference, because, you know, I'm not saying, oh, you know, there should be no trans surgery whatsoever. There is a minute percentage of people who've exhausted every other option, that the only way they're going to feel good in their own skin is to go through all this medical pathway. Now, you know, I don't think the public should fund that either, but I think, you know, that pathway should be available to them. But that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You're talking about the organophiles. They're the ones who are begging for this stuff. They're frothing for it.
Yeah. I think we'll end up seeing a lot of regret. Now, our guest today is Kath Deves from Save Women's Sports.
Awesome.
I'm just going to bring her in.
She's a bit of a celebrity now. Hi, Kath.
Just bringing her in from the waiting room. Might take a few seconds to click over.
She's a snowflake. What?
One thing that really gets to me is how many signatures the parliamentary petition for gender affirming healthcare got compared to Save Women's Sports petition, which was to protect women's sports category. Here she is. Hi Kath, how you going?
Hello.
Oh, just your audio. Here she is. Oh, switched off again. Just need your audio switched on. Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry, it should be automatic. I don't know why it does that.
Oh, that's all good. Could have been me who did that.
How are you going?
Sugars. My phone ringing.
How are you, Kath? Welcome.
Yeah, I'm good. Rainy Friday. What's the picture gone? Show it. Here we go. Oh yeah, all good. Yeah, I'm in the office, so it's like the acoustics might be a bit strange. I hope they're all right.
All good, all good.
Okay.
So I've had a chance to read through the new Ioc Guidelines, and oh dear, they've just gone the opposite direction, haven't they?
They absolutely have. I think we were all completely shocked at the extent to which they went. Someone even commented that they out-TRA'd the TRAs, because even Joanna Harper, so maybe we've gone a bit too far with some of this. But they've completely demolished the category of sex for sporting competition, and it is all on the basis of gender identity, according to the Ioc now. Yeah.
Just crazy. And there wasn't any mention of testosterone levels even, and I think that would have kept a small number of trans women out, but now they've just done away with that altogether.
Look, I mean, they were clinging on to that 10 nanomoles argument for the last Olympics, and now suddenly testosterone doesn't matter. And we've got the director of Richard Budgett, who's the director for medicine and science for the Ioc, saying testosterone doesn't matter, and literally saying words that I've heard TRAs use when they're arguing for their inclusion in women's sports that make absolutely no sense. And he was parroting those testosterone arguments, and it was really just embarrassing, because as we know, testosterone within the sexes, so man, you've got maybe a low testosterone guy, high testosterone guy, it's almost irrelevant. Same within women. But when you look at what testosterone does for biological men compared to biological women, there's not even any crossover. You know, when you look at the graph of testosterone levels between men and women, there is an actual big gap in the middle, and the highest woman is not as high as the lowest man. So for them to just completely disregard that metric is absolutely absurd.
I guess we're in a times where they're not even going to say that it's a biological male. So people are going to be watching these sports, and they're going to hear this person referred to as she and not know. And it's good. And they're not, I don't even think they're going to disclose who's trans and who isn't. And I'm old enough to remember the Olympics from, 20, 30 years ago, where everyone was looking at the Russians and the Chinese and thinking, is that a man or a woman? And people were actually found out to be, replacing men with women and winning events and thrown out of the Olympics. And now look at them. It's mad.
I know now, I mean, the way the Ioc guidelines are written, you cannot do a test or test someone's testosterone for the purpose of determining their sex or their gender identity. Now, first of all, I'd like to know, is there a magical test for gender identity now and that we're not allowed to use? Didn't know we could test for stereotypes and feelings in your head. So as you rightly pointed out, Angie, there's going to be men competing, and we're not even if it's glaringly obvious, we will not be allowed to comment. We did see one example of that in the Olympics just past. I think his name was, he was an archer from Canada. He picked up a bow and arrow, 6 months before he won the national championships against women who'd been competing all their lives. And he was presented in Canada as a woman in the media. There was no mention of trans. Crazy. So it's already started.
There was there was a section in the guidelines about the right to privacy, and which I read as sort of indicating that that it's sort of like a gag order in the media in a way. What did you make of that?
Oh, I agree with you. It absolutely is. We're not to discuss anyone's sex or gender identity anymore. It's completely verboten. You might be aware that they put out media guidelines that were drafted by GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Association over in the US, which is effectively a trans lobby group now, saying to the media that you cannot acknowledge the biological sex. You cannot acknowledge that a male has a performance advantage if he claims a female gender identity. It's just ridiculous. And I think they might have come to that argument also partly because they've co-opted in all the intersex conditions. Oh. And obviously with the debate around, say, castor where, everyone's talking about their internal body organs and all of that. And I can't imagine how, confronting and humiliating it must be for that athlete. But I mean, at the end of the day, castor is male. All those runners, the African runners, in the 800 metres and the 400 metres, they are male. They have Y chromosome, undescended testes, male level testosterone, and bodies receptive to male level testosterone. So they get the androgenized physique that gives them the advantage that biological women can never overcome. So because their genitals didn't form properly, they get identified as a girl at birth and raised as such, whatever that means. But these are males. Like if you look at the podium, 800 metres, Rio Olympics, it was 3 of those males, gold, silver, bronze.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So insulting. It's so insulting. Have you been in touch with Linda Blade or Beth Seltzer, other women that are sort of leading the charge against this sort of thing? What's the mood at the moment?
I think everyone was pretty shell-shocked, to be honest. We didn't realise it was going to go that far. There has been, of course, a flurry of emails. I know various people are doing, various bits of media to try and get our side of the story out there. And there is a move afoot to get a more organised, concerted effort underway, because what the IOC also did, they took a very craven, cowardly position. They said these guidelines are not legally binding, even though we acknowledge it influences sports from every level, smallest grassroots, all the way through to obviously international competition, but it's not legally binding. But we're also just going to punt it onto the international federations to come up with their own policies. So undoubtedly we have the other side with all their millions of dollars and highly salaried employees who do this as a full-time job, unlike us, who do it in our spare time without on the smell of an oily rag. So they will undoubtedly be lobbying all the international federations. I am aware of a couple that are going to hold the line for women. I know with like athletics, they've decided to hold the line at 5 nanomoles of testosterone. So my understanding is most of those men cannot get down to that level. What's his name? CC Telfer couldn't. So he was excluded on that basis. Like Hannah Mounsey with AFL, she can't, he can't. So that's why he's excluded from A-level AFL. So I think they may be trying to solve the problem by going, oh, you can compete, but we'll make it in such a way that you actually can't in practicality. Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see.
Just before we got on this call, I looked up who are the board members for the International Olympic Committee, and out of 16 of them, there's 5 women. And I thought we should be targeting those women, but I couldn't find any email addresses yet. Do you think it's worthwhile?
Oh, absolutely. If anyone has capacity to write letters, I think it's absolutely important. They need to know that there are people watching and there are people who absolutely fundamentally disagree. You know, I mean, we're hosting the Olympics in 2032 in Brisbane. Now, my two little twins, they're soccer players. Their big dream is to either be a Matilda or watch the Matildas at the 2032 Brisbane. And just sitting there thinking, oh, like, what's it going to look like? Are we going to be able to have won this battle by then, or are we just going to see a complete travesty, mockery of women's sports with a whole lot of dudes running around in our competition?
Yeah. Would you have pulled your kids out because there's a bloke, you know, as their training coach, or, you know, like a trans-identified person, you know, invading their sporting, you know, their change rooms and, you know, trying to impose this gender diversity through coaching sports teams, you know? There's a lot of that going on. I mean, you know, it's not just about boys coming to play, it's about the coaches. It's about, you know, who's allowed access to your children and why.
Oh, absolutely. As you know, anyone who's across this issue, we see with these policies, particularly the ones that have been adopted by Sport Australia and that have been pushed by Pride in Sport, it includes, you know, the coaches, the umpires, the managers. It includes change rooms, toilets, facilities, overnight accommodation. And as we've been talking about, like, that is not to be disclosed because they're entitled to their privacy. Parents are not to be told. So you send your little 12-year-old off on her first away weekend from you to netball and she's billeted with an 18-year-old male. Are you kidding me? And you sort of think, oh, it wouldn't get to that point, but we're seeing it play out where it is getting to that point. And, you know, we know that there are predatory men in every institution, in every organisation. They will pursue careers, they will be volunteers, they will put themselves forward as being very charming and likeable to get access to your kids. We know this. This is safeguarding fundamentals 101. And that we've all just playing this game of willful pretend that all of a sudden it doesn't matter, that these men aren't going to weaponise and exploit this loophole. I mean, we are delusional. On the one hand, we have this huge debate in the political arena about, you know, sexual harassment in the workplace and in, you know, Parliament House and so on, and everyone's up in arms about it. And then on the other, we're just completely opening the door. So, you know, my question is to, like, where are the feminists in it? Where are all these liberal feminists who position themselves as, I'm the go-to media spokesperson on feminism, I'm all for women's rights, I'm all across the media? They are silent. It is really making me angry. And the sports bureaucrats who stand there and go, oh, we're all being inclusive for girls and lots of resources for girls. And meanwhile, over here, they're putting in policies that completely decimate their sports. Like, it's so craven, it's so hypocritical, and quite frankly, I'm really sick of it. They need to stand up. They need to stop being so afraid and, you know, either accept responsibility for what they're doing and go, okay, well, we're throwing safeguarding out the window. We're destroying girls' sports instead of trying to play both sides. Because I can tell you right now, history will not be kind to those people because I know who they are and I've written their names down and I won't forget.
There was something on the ABC 6 months or so ago where a well-known transgender bloke in his 40s was playing hockey with teenage girls aged between the age of, like, you know, 13 and 18. And it was all a big love fest. And, oh, I'm so glad that I've been included in the team and everyone's so supportive. And I was just sitting there going, you got to be kidding. Who decides who is a man and who is a trans woman? You know, what's the difference between a pervy man identifying as a trans woman to access kids and a genuine trans woman? How do we tell the difference? And if someone could tell me that, a lot of this would be solved. How do we tell the difference? We can't.
Yeah. And I just want to point out what happened with Girl Guides UK. Like, you know, but we've seen images of this man dressed up as some sort of dominatrix trans woman, And he's now in some leadership position in Girl Guides. What makes people think that this isn't going to happen in girls' sports here in Australia as a result of all this?
He was on Twitter offering to show his breasts. He was offering to show his breasts on Twitter, and he holds this huge position in Girl Guides. There's other pictures of him with guns, and these are all public pictures. So where are all the men who aren't stupid enough to publish that stuff, but still do it? What else are they doing that they're hiding, that they can get positions in these girls-only organisations? And, you can't tell me that the parents are aware of what's going on. I don't know any parent, even those that are fully hoodwinked by this whole trans thing, that would agree to their children being around those sort of men without their parents around.
Yep.
How are they getting these positions? It's because the boards of these orgs are voting them in. And why? Because of the financial stuff, because of the pressure, and because nobody wants to put up their hand and say, no, I don't agree with this, because they will be piled upon.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we all know, the workplace index, the Australian Workplace Equality Index, or the Pride in Sport Index, we all know that they get very few points for doing things that adhere to the ideology. I think Melbourne Uni only got 2 points for spending $100,000 on their diversity gender enforcer, the Dolores Umbridge of University of Melbourne. But if they have any bad press or they criticise the ideology, they lose 25 points. So, of course, but I don't know why they've bought into this index so severely. What do? Then they spend $20,000 on a corporate table so they can all clap at each other and get an award and put it on their website. Come on, it's pathetic.
It's all make-believe. Something that's not make-believe, though, is Senator Chandler is launching a pretty good fight back against all of this. What do you make of that? What do you think is going to happen there?
I commend Senator Chandler for her bravery with this. I am so delighted to see someone in Parliament actually taking a proactive role and standing up. Now, I know she has been working really hard on that draft. I know it's been back and forth to the drafters a number of times to get it right. It is focusing specifically on the sport, and all it is doing is clarifying what is already there. Because what the sports orgs in Australia have done, and Pride in Sport, is, as I keep saying, we already have those protections as women, biological women, state, federal level, but they tacked in gender identity back in 2013. So what they're doing is they're favouring an interpretation that prioritises gender identity instead of biological sex, even though the original purpose for that statute was biological sex. So gender identity shouldn't be there. So she's just going to clarify that and tidy it up so we understand that it is not unlawful to exclude biological males, irrespective of gender identity and hurt feelings. If they're born male, they can be excluded. And as I understand it, she's had a lot of support. She's had lots of people reaching out, lots of people saying they're concerned. So I really hope she gets bipartisan support from all Australians, because this is protecting our daughters, and irrespective of where you fall on the political spectrum, what religion you are or what race, whatever, our children, our girls deserve to be able to play sports safely and fairly.
Yep, absolutely.
People are so afraid to put their hand up and say, look, I don't agree. Even, if someone was to share Senator Chandler's petition on a Facebook page, people would be too afraid to say that they signed it. They do it anonymously, but they wouldn't want anyone else to see, just in case they got called a transphobe and a bigot and a Nazi. So, the other side relies very much on that shaming. And people are so reluctant to become involved publicly. And if we can just clarify at that upper level that it is not a crime to call someone, their birth sex. It's not, you're not going to be dragged before a tribunal and sued like a lot of people have been. If we can only clarify that for people, then more people will speak up, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, well, we seem to just be living in this environment of false consensus. It's like, whenever polls are run, we haven't been able to have the resources to do it here yet in Australia, but all, you know, England and US and Canada, it's always been a minimum of 2/3 of people do not agree that men should be playing in women's sports. So no one agrees with this. But we all think that everyone else agrees, and we're all too afraid. You know, it's like living in Stasi Germany before the wall fell, where 1 in 5 people was an informer within the community. So you had people informing on, you know, spouses and children and parents and all the rest of it. And I think this is a little bit the same, but I'm not sure what is going to get us to that tipping point where everyone sort of goes, oh, you don't agree either, I don't either. And then the wheels, you know, the scales fall off your eyes and we all realise we've been living in the Matrix. I don't know.
We clearly have, because like all the media, the police, the health department, the government, everyone is gaslighting us. They are lying. They are telling us to believe something that's not true. Now, surely people are alarmed by that. I know I am. I'm really worried about it. Every time that they report a male criminal as female, I freak out. I think, no, that's not fair. That's not right. And that's scary.
Yeah. Well, like the New South Wales police were patting themselves on the back for flying the trans flag above the headquarters for the week of Trans Awareness Week. Now, they are supposed to be politically impartial. That is against their code of conduct. And I think they also had like a ceremony for the Trans Day of Remembrance. And it's like, even in the Trans Crime Watch, where, you know, you've got all the pro-trans people following all crimes against trans people, 4 trans people have been killed in Australia and I think it's New Zealand since 2008. Now, I'm aware of 3 of them. 2 of them were males with trans identity killed in prostitution. The other one was a really dreadful domestic violence murder up in Brisbane. All 3 bail perpetrators are in prison. They were all horrible murders. But, you know, how many women and children have died? And it was International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women on Thursday. Do you think they were flying the flag for women at the police headquarters on Thursday? They probably didn't even know.
Yeah. They can't even use the word women. You can't use the word women when it comes to family violence. Even though we're getting murdered, it has to be family violence. It can't be male violence against women. You can't say that. That's wrong.
It's like we're all playing a big game of Twister and everyone's equal. I'm like, it's not like, that's what I always think about when I hear family violence. It's like, no, yeah, you're right. It's a misnomer to just sort of muddy the waters.
And getting back to trans statistics, trans people are actually more likely to commit crimes than be the victim of crime. You know, because they commit crimes at the same rate as males.
Yeah.
Just going back to the sports thing for a sec before we finish up, you know what I would like to see happen, and it would be absolutely fantastic if AFL women could do this, female cricketers, soccer players, rugby players, when like organise amongst themselves. If you're out there watching, this is my big idea. Go onto the field like you're about to play a game. When the whistle blows, you just sit down and don't play. And I think if women's sports teams started doing this, it would create so much controversy. They would be unable to ignore it. It would create solidarity amongst sports women. And I think then we could really get some changes going. What do you think, Kath?
I think that's a great idea. I think, you know, it's not like silent, peaceful protests are very, very powerful. I think the problem would be is, you know, for most women, we're so busy by the time you get to the field or whatever and you're about to have your game, you're like, I just want to play the game. I don't want to make a political statement. But it would almost be worthwhile, you know, with Claire's thing, getting some traction and saying, right, well, maybe on this Saturday, we're having a sit-in for women's sports and try and get it all on the same day.
Yeah, the sponsors will pull out though. There'll be, you know, uproar from the sponsors, even at local sports level. They're like, oh, but you know, we're giving you money to play. And sponsors have got a lot of sway, particularly in the upper level sport. You know, they'll pull sponsorship from a woman who steps out of line.
Yes, I have heard of that.
Yeah, a lot of Australians aren't competitive. I follow motorsport, and a lot of Australians aren't competitive because they can't get sponsors. You know, so you've got to be really careful. You've got to toe the corporate line as well as, you know, the you know, sports person's line and the ethical line and the trans line. You know, it's a very political, you know, sport is political these days.
And Coach Linda Blade in Canada also said that it shouldn't be up, like when you're talking about elite athletes and people are like, well, those girls should just protest and so on. She said, when you're competing at that level, you cannot have distractions. Like you cannot have relationships with drama, or you basically can't even have sex. You've got to concentrate on your performance. So if for someone competing at an international elite level to then get embroiled in something like this, it could, you know, I'm like, you do have a point. So it sort of should be up to, you know, everybody else or the retired athletes.
Yeah.
You know,
Martina.
Yeah.
Well, I am trying to get a bunch of women and men, if men want to come, to protest out the front of this upcoming Boxing Day test match here in Melbourne at the MCG. So if anyone's interested, I'll put a link in the description to get in touch. You know, I think also we're still in the awareness raising phase here in Australia. So it's just a matter of getting the word out about what's actually going on. Yeah, I think so. And you know, we've got Beijing next year. So obviously we're going to see a lot more of this nonsense, and it might just hopefully pique more people. I mean, Laurel Hubbard, as you know, annoying as it was seeing him stand there, he did us a big favour. Very grateful to him because he really shone a light on the ridiculousness of these policies.
I got 2 Twitter bans for calling him a man. I think I got one on Facebook too, just for saying Laurel Hubbard is a man, and I got a ban. Oh well, I'll do it again. Completely unrepentant.
All right. Well, thanks for chatting with us, Kath. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no worries, Stasha.
Thank you for everything that you do, Kath. You're wonderful. You're such a good advocate. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'm really glad to see some Aussie women get a regular show up and going, because I think, you know, every jurisdiction's dealing with things differently and having different challenges, and it's really good we've got a locally focused one. So well done.
Thank you.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
The long goodbye.
No, you gotta go.
Yeah. Do you want me to drop out so you guys have a chat? Is that what you usually do?
Yeah, sorry.
All right, guys. See you later.
See ya. Bye. I love this stuff. I love the tech stuff. Oh, goodness. Wow. Geez, we had some pretty high profile guests for a couple of humble TERFs.
I reckon. Yeah. I tell you though, that's my idea. I think unfortunately it is going to fall on the shoulders of high profile professional female athletes to start speaking out, or doing a silent protest, or you know, getting to the game and just sitting down. Or if you're in an individual track and field event, if you're up against a male, you just fudge it. All the women that are forced to compete against a male, just fudge it. Just walk your 100-meter sprint instead of run it.
Yeah.
I don't know what else it's going to take.
And these retired athletes, if you're retired from sport, get out and talk, you know, get out and talk about it.
Get in touch with Save Women's Sports. They're looking for high-profile female athletes and even male athletes to come and bat for us. Come and, you know, speak up for women. Yeah. So continuing the sports theme.
Oh, yes. Got myself into a bit of trouble this week. Just for something new. You know, I was discussing a certain former football coach a couple of times in our little humble podcast here. And I guess who's dropped into my followers on Twitter and is acting very eager to speak to us, but it has to be in person. And I have a feeling that I may be getting a special letter from somebody's solicitor for daring to speak about this person publicly, and also sharing a few memes about how preposterous it is that people celebrate someone who is trans-identified when they have a history of crime, like violence against women kind of crime. So I shared a few memes because a certain football club was celebrating an individual who I cannot name. And because I'm outraged that they are being celebrated in such a way when they have domestic violence charges, and their victims are upset that this person is being referred to as she. And so rather than go through formal channels, this person is kind of hanging around, I think, with the intent of making me uncomfortable. And everyone said block and run. And I thought, nah, I'm not going to block. I'm not going to run because I've done nothing wrong.
Can we say his name?
Nah, you can, but if I do, I might get in trouble.
I'm willing to risk it. It was all over the news last week. Dani, Laidley, former North Melbourne player, he played for another team as well in AFL, and then was a coach at North Melbourne for some time. North Melbourne Football Club has given him a gig to come in and speak, which I never ended up watching, by the way. I never got around to it. So they've given him a platform, and the way that The Age in particular portrayed him as like some sort of hero to the club. Mm-hmm. This is a man who pleaded guilty to stalking a woman, breaching an intervention order, I do believe.
More than one victim too.
I think he tried to mow down his now ex-wife with a car.
Not sure about that one.
Okay, we're not sure about that one. Someone said, I saw that somewhere. It just terrorized at least one of these, well, both of these women, to the point, and then
multiple breaches of domestic violence order. So, got an IVO on him because he's being stalky, breaches it multiple times.
And then one of his victims has seen him sitting out the front of her house in his car in a wig and a dress. The cops have come along and arrested him for breaching an intervention order. The cops have taken... And stalking. The cops have taken a photo of him in his...
And drugs.
Wig and dress and meth. And shared it around some police officer's WhatsApp group, and all of a sudden he's a victim. And the cops, is it true the cops had to pay him out $200,000?
Two police officers lost their job, and the police paid him $200,000 damages. But I can bet you anything his victims haven't got any damages.
Yeah. Now, the way the Age spoke about him was just absolutely appalling. Like he's some sort of hero. Like I know we've come to expect this when it comes to AFL players.
Ben Cousins, for example, he's good looking. He gets away with everything. An absolute.
So I guess even though I'm still really angry at North Melbourne Football Club for platforming him, an abuser of women, and The Age got it so wrong. And
even the ABC, when the ABC's full peak trans, but it's not exactly a sporting channel. The ABC, the SBS, every single major channel posted how wonderful it was that he went back to his sporting club and that he's a hero and he's done all these wonderful things to, make trans more acceptable to everybody and blah, 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 blah. And his crimes were completely forgotten. And what I noticed in searches in his name, there was searches about there was articles about what earrings he was wearing coming up, but the crimes he'd committed were way, 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 way down the search. So all of this media propaganda about how stunning and brave this person is has pushed down the facts. And the thing that brought him into our attention, and actually the thing that actually caused him to trans, because he wasn't even identifying as transgender until he was arrested full time. Like he wasn't trans full time. He was still a male. So the crimes were committed in his capacity as of being a man. And then his victims have got to listen to everybody, everywhere, describing him as a hero and a female.
Yeah. Yep. Something else I'd like to say about him is that he 100% fits the typology of autogynephilia. He's heterosexual. He's been married, has children. He's transitioned late in life. He must be around 50 or something. And he's, lived this life engaged in very masculine activity of being involved in a football club.
What is it with that? Like sport, like footy players and military. Like, what's with that? Like hypermasculinity. Like, it's just insane. Oh, but no, I was overcompensating. I was always a woman, and I was overcompensating.
That reminds me, even the guy in that documentary, Girl Like You, even he at one point said he was embarrassed about the fact that he'd played drums for all these years. That was him trying to be masculine and hide his inner woman, and like
mad. Oh, but no, I'm actually quite I feel a little bit intimidated, but I'm not actually scared, but I feel a bit intimidated. I feel like I'm going to get a writ or an IBO stuck on me or something just for talking about this person. So I'm a bit nervous to see this video, and I'm going to be in big trouble. But why else would he want to meet up in person? We can have a conversation via Zoom or via phone or via Messenger. Why on earth would he want to meet up with me in person if it's not to serve me or for some other nefarious reason? Like, why? I don't understand, but I'm feeling nervous, and this is why they do it. They do it. If you call them out, they will intimidate you, and they will get all their followers to intimidate you too.
Very much like
people are silent.
Very much like what Bridget Clinch did to Beth Red.
Yeah. Well, good luck to him suing me, but but yeah, that's exactly what he wants to do, is to drag me through a tribunal and humiliate me publicly if it's possible, and get some money out of me. Why not? But why? All I've done is mention things that are already public in the media, and yes, I've voiced an opinion on them, but they're in the public domain. I'm entitled to have an opinion, and I'm entitled to have an opinion that doesn't agree with him.
Yeah.
I'm entitled to call him, and I'm entitled to be outraged, and I'm entitled to feel sorry for his wife, and I'm entitled to be enraged for his victims.
Mm-hmm.
And if he wants to,
I think he's got.
Yeah, and he's following me. He's engaging in conversation with me. Now, if he doesn't like the things that I'm saying, he can bugger off. He doesn't have to look at it, but he's actively looking at what I'm tweeting, which is quite not very trans friendly. And yeah, I've got a few trans followers, but it might be uncomfortable for him. He's only new to this, and he's reading this stuff thinking that it's about him. Why is he here? Why is he torturing himself?
Yeah.
Go away, leave me alone. And I'm not going to shut up.
No, I agree.
For anyone. But I'm nervous. Of course I am, but that's why they do it.
Yeah. Because I made that meme for you, and I had to Google I had to look up.
Take the rap for that. Yeah.
I had to look up. I had to get the North Melbourne Football Club logo and the AFL logo. So I had to do a bit of Googling. And as a result, I'm still getting freaking AFL stories in my news feed suggested for you. But I've got to say, after that happened, that day, after I think it was The Age that broke that story, like every single major news media outlet in Australia was running the same story. And it came up on my feed, suggested for you, some guy, Rowan something, and he'd shared an article and he'd tagged the journalist that wrote the article. And I just commented, the real story here is, why is North Melbourne Football Club platforming a domestic abuser of women? And then I said, he's clearly got autogynephilia because of blah, 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 and something else. Anyway, because the journalist was tagged in this post, he's had a go at me. He's like, oh, is that your official diagnosis? Is it doctor? And I just ignored him, but it turned into this huge, like 50 replies to my one comment, really? All going off at him. But you know, most people were in support of me and what I was saying, and people see through this shit now from the AFL. Like, AFL clubs need to stop platforming abusers, stop supporting them. Like, all this rallying around Dean Laidley in his hour of need was
and
how...
Cousins and the rest of them.
Gosh.
And the rest of them. And then look at the NRL, full of rapists, and they don't care.
Yeah.
You know, and this is it. You know, this is this ridiculous sort of dual narrative in society where, you know, women's rights and, you know, Me Too and all that stuff, and women, you know, consent, boundaries, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, everyone's celebrating all sorts of revolting violence and misogyny. It's ridiculous. And it's the media that's giving us both. Like, I really feel like we're being gaslit, particularly on this trans stuff, where they were giving this, you know, oh yeah, you've got all your boundaries and consent and freedom. And on the other hand, except this man is a woman or else. And the whole of the media is doing that to us. And of course, anyone who knows anything about, you know, narcissistic abuse knows that that's how gaslighters confuse their victims and make them, you know, pliable, going, yes, I don't know what's going on, whatever. And they're doing that at a societal level. And that's how you snap yourself out of it. You just go, no. Yeah. You know, you don't go, oh, gee, you know, maybe I shouldn't say anything, or, oh, you know, I don't want to be confused, so I'll just step away. You just come in, you smash it out and you go, no, I'm not going to take this shit. Stop lying. Yeah. Stop lying to me.
Yeah.
Stop lying. Stop lying, media.
That's right. That's right. And what you said about having this dual narrative going on in the media, I think that a day or two after that whole Dean Laidley thing broke, then it was cricket's turn, and the Test captain, Clark, I think it is, he's in trouble for sending a dick pic to a woman, and it
was consensual. That was their thing. It was consensual. It was a consensual dick pic. So it was not unbecoming of a, I think he's married, you know, team captain or whatever he is. You know, it's like, just normalizing dick pics. That should be a crime. Normalizing dick pics in the public.
Well, the Age ran a piece. It was sort of an opinion piece by I think the journalist was Kerry Sachs, I think, and you know, she laid it out. Dick pics are not okay. Here's why. It can be very intimidating. Some men do it as a power trip to offend and intimidate the recipient. And so I've emailed her and said, okay, now can you address what the Age, because she's writing for the Age, can you address what they did with the Dean Laidley story? And, you know, crickets, haven't got a reply back from her, but yeah.
I think we need to lobby journalists. I really do, because there's a lot of women out. I send articles to certain journalists, usually ABC ones, because I know there's some damn good journalists at the ABC, but they're essentially being silenced. And I just flick articles at them occasionally, or interesting things that other journalists have written, because I need them to know that we're out there and that we're not happy, and that most people are not happy with this capitulation to the trans borg and with the erasure of women and the erasure of our rights and the dismissal of our, you know, crimes that are against us. You know, most people are not okay with that. But you wouldn't think so looking at the media. And these journalists have got to step out of the box. They've got to start saying to their producers, you know, this TERF thing's a bit awkward, but I think someone maybe should talk to them.
Lee Sales, 7:30 report. I wish she would tackle it. I've emailed her this week as well and offered her a free copy.
And then there's Sarah Ferguson from Four Corners. She's a wonderful journalist. And I wouldn't, you know, and a lot of them like, oh God, surely she's a TERF, you know. And there's also some politicians I know, you know, you know that they're gender critical and they're lying and they're sharing their trans flags and stuff. And you know they are gender critical women. But they're just too afraid because they're scared they're going to lose their career or they're going to be attacked by the public if they say, look, I agree with the TERFs, I mean, Dave Chappelle, Team TERF, and more people have to do that, because if enough people do it, that we keep saying this, if enough people step up, then they can't attack everybody. And that's what's going to make the change. You just got to do it.
Well, I'll just remind everyone that Gender Critical Coming Out Day is planned for the 19th of December.
What do we do if we're already out? Like, don't we ever get a day? Or every day's TERF Day.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I think it's great. And like we've said before too, even if you can't come out and say this is me and be public, it's those little things.
Especially dealing with your workplace, create a fake email account and email your HR manager and just lay it out and say, I'm not doing this publicly because I'm not doing this under my own name because I don't want to get fired. But this is what I really think of all this bullshit inclusivity training that you've been making us sit through. It's just offensive. Yeah, that's one option.
Refuse to do your pronouns. Say you're not ready to come out yet.
Yep. Yeah.
Not ready to come out yet. Sorry, not doing my pronouns. I mean, why is anyone's, especially because now it's not just about it's not just about he, her. You're almost telling people your sexuality in your pronouns now. It's not as simple as just male, he, her, whatever. It's all these other things that, no.
Just on the subject of, being cancelled or personally cancelled, there was a pretty good 3-part series in The Age. It started on Saturday. The second part really looked at the Transgender Wars. Dr. Holly Lawford-Smith was featured, and I found it to be sort of cautious. I think the journo, it was a bloke, James Barton, I think his name was. He's quite cautious about how he went about it all, but I think he did a good job. Did you read it?
Yeah, I did read that. Yeah, I did. I thought it was, it was more understanding of our side than most things written. Like it seemed quite open-minded, which is always a big plus, because we don't get represented in a positive light at all usually. And I think it portrayed particularly Holly in a positive light. I do. And she deserves it. She's a legend. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to her book. I have no idea when it's due out, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think we're coming up on an hour, Ange.
I forget there's a whole bunch of people out there watching us. Sometimes we're just crapping on and we've got a time limit. Yeah.
Any other bits and bobs you want to bring up before we go?
Oh, no, I don't know. It just gets weirder every week. It's never a dull moment when you're a public TERF. Yeah, and once again, I just wish people would come and do some in real life action with us, or write some letters, or just come out of their comfort zone. And here in Melbourne too, we're having quite a few little social engagements where we'll meet up, and we're a broad church where women from all different backgrounds come together, and and every time we've been to one of those social things, we've made new friends. It's great, and we've had quite a few of them. We're trying to get another one going now that we're finally out of lockdown again. So if you're interested in meeting other women who share your gender critical views, get in touch with us, and we'll tell you next time we've got something going on. Or if you're interested in some political action too, go and chalk the ABC or hand out pamphlets on Boxing Day or whatever, come and let us know. And if you've got any suggestions for ways that we can pique the public, let us know.
Yeah. Actually, just reminded me, there is some direct action planned in Sydney this weekend. And so far, my response I've received about my idea to stand out the front of the MCG at the cricket, I've only got 3 yeses so far. So it'd be great to get 20 of us. I know it's a shit, but we'll see. Yeah. Thanks, Ange. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Thank you, Kath, for coming on and chatting with us, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye, everybody.